Screams in the dust. The twin suns of planet Cathar burned the desert sand. Hot winds blew through the red rocks, carrying a terrible sound. A scream. It was not a sound of war or battle. It was the sound of pain, of someone helpless. Far below, the cliffs, a young alien girl lay chained to a stone post. Her arms were bruised. Her skin, a soft silver blue, was covered in dirt and blood. Her name was Virella, but the guards didn't care. "Cry louder, freak," one of them laughed. He kicked her ribs with his heavy boot. "Maybe someone in the stars will hear you." The others laughed. They were not kind. These alien guards were from the Yerk Dominion, cold, cruel, and proud. They believed they were better than all other races, and they hated Virella's kind. She was signal-born, a rare alien species with strange abilities. Some said her kind could hear the stars. Others said they could speak to ancient machines. But to the guards, she was just a threat, and threats had to be broken. Up on a cliff not far away, Darren, a human scavenger, looked through his old binoculars. His dirty jacket flapped in the wind. His boots were cracked, his face tanned and rough. He didn't come to rescue anyone. He only came to find scrap. But then he heard the screams. He focused the lens and froze. A girl, chained, bleeding, surrounded by monsters in armor. He slowly lowered the binoculars. His fingers were shaking. He looked down at the small blaster on his belt. It wasn't powerful, it wasn't fast, and he wasn't a soldier. But something inside him snapped. He had seen cruelty before, but not like this, and not to someone so young. Back at the camp, the lead guard pulled out a glowing rod. "Last chance, girl. Tell us where the others are hiding." Virella lifted her face, tears and blood running down her cheek. Her voice was weak, but her words were strong. "I don't know, and I wouldn't tell you even if I did." The guard grinned and raised the rod. Suddenly, a loud blast. The rod flew out of his hand. Smoke rose from the rocks. The guards turned, shocked. Standing above them on the ridge was a man, human, holding a blaster in both hands. "Let her go." Silence. Then laughter. The guards didn't take him seriously. Just one human? No armor? No backup? The leader waved his hand. "Kill him." 4 guards raised their weapons. Darren jumped down the cliff. He moved fast, firing before his feet hit the ground. One shot hit a guard in the face. He fell with a scream. The others fired back. Darren rolled behind a broken wall. Dust flew everywhere. Virella watched, her heart pounding. She didn't know who this man was, but he was fighting for her, fighting alone. Darren threw a smoke grenade. The air filled with gray clouds. Shouts and laser fire echoed. He ran through the smoke and reached Virella. Her eyes widened in shock. You're human," she whispered. "No time to chat," he said, cutting her chains with a plasma knife. "Can you walk?" She tried. Her legs were weak, but she nodded. Darren grabbed her arm, pulled her up, and ran. The guards yelled. One of them fired a net gun. It missed by inches. They ran through the dust and smoke, across the sand, into the rocky canyon beyond. They didn't stop running until the screams and shots were far behind. They found cover behind a fallen metal structure, a crashed old drone. Both of them were gasping for breath. "You came back for me," Virella said, her voice shaking. "Why?" Darren looked at her. For a moment, he didn't answer. Then he said, "Because no one else would." Far, behind them, the Yerk guard searched the camp. The leader picked up the broken chains and hissed, "Find them, I don't care how far they run. Bring me the girl." He looked up at the sky. "And kill the human." The first shot. The fire still burned behind them. Smoke rose in the orange sky, and the screams from the prison camp echoed faintly in the wind. But Virella and Darren didn't stop. They ran over sharp rocks and dry hills until Virella collapsed. "I can't," she whispered, her knees giving out. Darren caught her just in time. Her body was shaking, and her skin felt cold, even under the burning sun. All right. All right, he said gently. We'll rest here. He looked around. No trees, no shelter, just a half-buried cargo crate sticking out of the sand. He helped her inside. The metal was hot, but at least it hid them. Varela leaned against the wall, her breaths uneven. Darren took out a water flask and held it to her lips. She sipped. Her glowing eyes watched him closely, filled with confusion. "You're not like the others," she said softly. "No," Darren replied. "I'm human." Flashback, just 20 minutes ago. The camp had been filled with laughter and cruelty. The Yerk guards were bored, and that made them dangerous. Varela, bruised and silent, refused to give them what they wanted. Location of the other signalborns. They used the electric rod again. Her body shook, but she didn't scream this time. She just stared at the sky. Then, a sharp, unnatural blast. The sound tore through the air. One of the guards dropped. A hole smoked in his armor. Confusion followed. The next blast hit another one in the chest. They didn't see where the shots were coming from. Darren was moving fast, ducking between rocks and debris. He wasn't a soldier, but he was smart and fast and angry. The third shot didn't hit anyone, but it was aimed at the chain holding Varela's hands. It broke with a spark. She looked up. A shadow landed beside her. A human. A real human. "Can you move?" he asked. Her mouth opened. No sound came. She nodded. The fourth shot went straight into a generator, and the lights exploded. The camp fell into darkness and dust. They ran. "Back to the present. You risked your life for me," Varela whispered. "Why?" Darren looked away. "I didn't plan to. I was just scavenging nearby." He paused. His voice turned quiet. "But then I heard, 'You scream.'" She stared at him. "No one else would have helped," she said. "Not even my own kind. I'm signal-born." He didn't answer, but his eyes said he didn't care. To him, she was just someone who didn't deserve pain. Suddenly, a beep echoed from Darren's belt. A tracker alert. His eyes narrowed. He opened the device. A blinking red dot moved slowly toward them. "Damn it, they're following us." Varela's eyes widened. "They'll find me." "No," Darren said, standing up and grabbing his weapon. "Not if I stop them first." He walked outside the crate. The wind was picking up. A dust storm was coming. A perfect cover. He knelt behind a large rock and aimed his blaster toward the ridge. 1 dot on the radar, then 2, then 5. He had one plan: make the first shot count. The enemy appeared, shadows moving through the storm. They were close, shouting to each other in their alien tongue. Darren waited. His finger rested on the trigger. He remembered Earth. He remembered war. He took a deep breath and fired. The first shot hit the lead alien in the neck. It dropped with a gurgle. The others shouted and ducked. Laser fire lit the storm. Darren rolled, dodged, and fired back. It wasn't clean. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough to drive them back. When silence finally returned, Darren was bleeding from the arm, panting hard. He stumbled back to the crate. Varela looked at him wide-eyed. "You're hurt." "I've had worse," he said with a small smile. "We have to keep moving." They walked again, slowly this time. Every step Varela took, she leaned on him, and every step Darren took, he scanned the horizon. The girl had a secret. The Yerk Empire wanted her dead, and Darren was the only one who stood between her and the whole galaxy. Hunted across the Badlands, the desert wasn't empty. It was watching them. Every dune hid eyes. Every shadow whispered danger. Darren knew it, and Varela could feel it. For 2 days, they moved through the Badlands, silent, slow, and careful. The planet's heat was cruel during the day, and the freezing wind at night was just as deadly, but it wasn't nature they feared. It was the Empire's hunters, the ones who never spoke, the ones who wore silent boots and dark visors, the ones who never left survivors. At night, Darren set up a small energy shield around their camp using parts from a broken mining drone. Varela watched in silence, her body weak but healing. Her wrists still had bruises. Her face was pale. Darren gave her a small protein bar and sat beside her. The stars above them shone brighter than anywhere in the galaxy. This world had no cities, no noise, only sky. "You ever seen stars like that before?" Darren asked. Varela looked up, eyes soft. "They always looked cold to me. Until now." He smiled slightly but said nothing more. Suddenly, Varela flinched. She grabbed her head. "What's wrong?" Darren asked quickly. I hear something." Her hands pressed against her temples. Her glowing eyes turned bright. Brighter than before. "It's not a voice," she whispered. "It's a signal." Far away across the hills, a tracker drone blinked awake. It floated silently, scanning for life signs. It found something. 2 targets. Coordinates locked. It sent the signal. The hunters moved. Darren packed up the gear. "In seconds. We're not safe here," he said. "Come on, we move now." Varela stood, still dizzy. "Why are they chasing me?" she asked. "What do they want?" Darren looked at her. He wasn't sure she even knew the truth. "Because you're different. And they hate different." As they climbed over a broken ridge, Darren suddenly stopped and raised his hand. "Shh." Varela froze. A faint hum came from behind them. Not from the sky, not from ahead, but from beneath the sand. The ground exploded. A Yerk hunter shot up from below, covered in sand, his dark armor almost invisible. His weapon fired. A blue bolt grazed Darren's shoulder, spinning him to the ground. Varela screamed. The hunter stepped forward, silent, precise, merciless. He aimed for Darren's head. Then, a bright light burst from Varela's hands. Boom! The hunter flew back like a broken doll. His armor sparked. His limbs twitched. He didn't move again. Darren sat up, gasping. "What was that?" Varela stared at her hands, shaking. "I don't know," she said. "It just happened." Darren looked at the hunter's body, metal, parts fried, weapon melted. "You're more than just a girl they tortured." She nodded slowly. "I think I'm the last of my kind." They didn't rest that night. They ran again. Deeper into the Badlands, sandstorms rose behind them. 2 moons lit their path. Varela said nothing more. But inside, something inside her was waking up. Something the Empire had tried to destroy. The final scene of the night. A satellite in orbit zoomed in on their position. The image flickered. 1 human, 1 signal-born. The admiral of the Yerk fleet saw the image and growled. "Send the Shadow Division. The girl is not to be captured anymore." He narrowed his eyes. "She is to be erased?" The hidden shelter long. Hago machines lived here. Now only silence does. Darren pushed open a rusted door buried beneath a dune. Sand poured in like water. Behind him, Varela limped, her glowing eyes dim, her steps weak but steady. Their footprints vanished as the desert wind blew. What they had found wasn't on any map. Not a cave. Not a ruin. It was a forgotten war bunker. From a time when humans had first set foot on Cathar during the old Galactic War. No one had been here in decades, at least no one living. As Darren lit a hand lamp, steel walls flickered into view. Rust crawled across the ceiling. Dead consoles lined the hallway. Pieces of armor and broken drones littered the floor like bones. Varela held onto the wall for balance. "What is this place?" Darren stepped carefully. "A human outpost, built long before you were born, before the Empire took this world." He knelt beside a shattered droid, wiped off the dust on its chest. It still bore the Earth Alliance symbol. This place was a battlefield. They reached a central chamber, half collapsed but dry and safe. "This'll work," Darren said, throwing down his pack. "No signals, no patrols, no eyes." He looked at her. "You need to rest." Varela shook her head. "They're still coming." "Not tonight," he replied. "Tonight we hide." She finally gave in, Curling up on a blanket he laid out. Her breathing was shallow but calm. Darren stayed awake. He had seen the hunters. He knew they didn't stop. Hours passed. Then, a flicker. One of the ancient screens on the wall blinked. Then again. Green light flashed across dead metal. Darren noticed it. He approached the console. Text appeared. Typed by no one. User detected. Earth designation human male. DNA match Darren Voss. Systems partially operational. Command. He froze. Impossible. The bunker recognized him. The system was still alive. Varela sat up slowly. What is it? Darren turned. Something's waking up. The bunker still has power. He typed status. The screen replied, energy low, weapons offline, 1 AI core active. Security mode engaged. Signal-borne presence detected. Varela stepped back. It knows me. Darren glanced at her, then at the screen. Is that bad? She didn't answer. Instead, she walked up to the console and placed her hand on it. The screen flickered. Words vanished. Suddenly, the whole room glowed blue. A voice, metallic but calm, spoke from the walls. Signal-borne registered. Human protector confirmed. Final protocol unlocked. A door opened at the far end of the chamber. Cold light spilled. Through behind it, a room full of equipment, medical supplies, old tech, and a floating orb, glowing with strange symbols. The AI spoke again. They fear her, because she is the last key. Darren stepped back. Key to what? The voice answered. To ending their control. Suddenly, warning lights flashed red. Movement detected. Outside the bunker, footsteps crunched on the sand. Varela's eyes glowed brighter. They've found us. Darren grabbed his weapon. We fight? Varela stared at the orb. No, she said. We activate what they tried to bury. She stepped into the light, into the room of the ancients, while Darren stood ready at the door, aiming into the dark. The hunters were coming. But this time, they were not the only ones with power. Betrayal in the fog. The fog wasn't natural. It came too fast. 1 hour ago, the desert skies were clear. Now a thick white mist rolled down the cliffs and swallowed the sand like a ghost. Darren stood at the shelter's entrance, holding his blaster tight. The bunker's old systems had gone quiet again. The strange orb Varela touched now floated in the air beside her, glowing soft blue. She looked at the fog and whispered, This isn't weather, it's cover. Cover for what? Darren asked. Then they heard it. Footsteps, but not heavy. Not like armored hunters. Light. Calm. Alone. A figure appeared out of the mist. A tall, alien male, cloaked in brown robes. He raised his hands to show he had no weapons. I'm not here to hurt you, he said. Darren didn't lower his gun. Who are you? He asked coldly. The stranger stopped a few steps away from the entrance. My name is Zurl. I was once part of the Signal-borne Council, before the Empire destroyed it. I followed the signal. Her signal. He looked at Varela with strange reverence. You're the last. I thought you were dead. Varela stepped closer, uncertain. You knew my people? I was one of your people, Zurl said softly. Before fear broke us, before the Empire used lies to turn us against each other. Darren kept watching Zurl carefully. Something about him felt too smooth, too rehearsed. Still, they let him inside. Inside the bunker, Zurl sat near the old console and explained. There were once 12 Signal-borne, he said, each linked to a planet's core systems like guardians. You, Varela, were bonded to Cathar. That's why the machines respond to you. Varela looked at the floating orb beside her. It pulsed, as if it was breathing, but the others, they're gone? She asked. Zurl nodded. Hunted, captured. Some turned traitor. He paused. But you're different. You're still pure. Darren clenched his fists. Why are you here now? He asked. Zurl smiled. To protect, or later that night, as Varela slept, Darren stepped outside with Zurl. The fog was still thick but calm. Darren didn't trust calm. "I've seen good liars," he said. "You talk like one." Zurl chuckled. "I don't blame you. Humans are trained to doubt. I'm trained to survive." Darren narrowed his eyes. "If you touch her, or lead anyone here, I'll kill you." Zurl didn't smile this time. "I understand." They went back inside. But Zurl's smile returned the moment Darren looked away. At midnight, the orb pulsed red. Varela woke up gasping. "The orb! It's warning us!" Darren jumped up. "Something's wrong." Suddenly, the bunker lights turned off. Total darkness. A voice echoed. Deep, mechanical. "Unauthorized access, intruder detected." The console sparked. Sparks flew. Varela looked at Zurl, standing too close to the old machine core. "You lied," she whispered. Zurl sighed. "I was hoping I could unlock you quietly, but you're more stubborn than I expected." He lifted his hand. Not flesh. Metal. His fingers retracted into tools and wires. Zurl wasn't a signal-born. He was a Yerk-designed infiltrator. Darren fired instantly. The shot hit Zurl's side, revealing metal under the robes. The false Zurl moved fast, slamming Darren into the wall. "Humans, always so emotional," he hissed. Varela stood in front of the orb. It turned bright blue again. Zurl raised. His arm. Blades spun from his wrist. "You were supposed to be broken," he said. "But you're not." "I'm not alone anymore," she replied. The orb shot out a shockwave. The whole bunker shook. Machines lit up. Walls glowed. The dead tech came alive. Zurl screamed as the energy surged through him. Darren pulled Varela back. The bunker's systems began to burn. The false guardian fried from the inside. Zurl collapsed, his voice glitching. "You will never stop them." Then silence. Varela fell to her knees, breathing hard. Darren put his arm around her. "You all right?" She nodded. "He wasn't the last." "No," Darren said, loading his gun again. "But next time we won't be surprised." The fog outside began to clear, but new shadows were moving in the distance. Enemies were close. But now, they were ready. The last stand at Black Ridge, the stars vanished, not because it was night, not because of clouds, but because of the Yerk warships, hovering above Black Ridge. A dozen dark shapes floated in the sky like silent beasts, casting long shadows across the cracked desert floor. Their engines made no sound, but the dread they brought could be felt deep in the chest. Below them, at the edge of a narrow canyon, stood a single old bunker. Inside that bunker, 2 lives prepared for the impossible. A wounded human and a signal-born girl. Darren adjusted the final energy cell into the rail cannon, an ancient weapon mounted to the bunker wall, half buried under sand and rust. "I don't even know if this thing will fire," he muttered. Varela stood beside him, the glowing orb floating just over her shoulder. Its blue pulses had grown brighter over the last hour. "It will," she said softly. "It's waiting." "For what?" She looked toward the sky. "For me to decide." Above them, Yerk dropships opened their hatches. Dozens of soldiers descended by jetpack, weapons ready. Black armor, red visors, not a word spoken. They didn't want prisoners this time. They wanted erasure. Back in the bunker, machines from a forgotten age blinked back to life. Screens showed enemy positions, targeting systems aligned, and from deep below, something old rumbled awake. Darren grabbed his rifle and looked at Varela. "No running this time," she nodded. No more chains. The first wave came fast. Hoverbikes zipped toward the entrance of the ridge, firing plasma bolts. Darren triggered the turret. Thoom! The cannon fired. One bike exploded midair, sending flaming pieces into the dust. Another veered off, crashing, into the canyon wall. Varela raised her hands and the orb spun rapidly. The remaining bikes suddenly lost power, crashing as their systems fried in the air. She didn't even touch them, just willed it. More enemies came. Heavier armor, ground troops, spider-like bots. Darren and Varela fell back into the bunkers, lower level. Darren planted mines along the hallway. "You ever use a detonator?" he asked. Varela raised an eyebrow. "I've been one." The walls shook. The front blast doors collapsed. The enemy was inside. Darren triggered the mines. Boom, boom, boom. Smoke and fire lit the tunnel. But still, they came. In the final chamber, Varela placed her hand on the orb. The walls turned silver blue. A giant sphere rose from the ground, a glowing control pod connected to ancient roots beneath the planet. "Is that the core?" Darren asked. Varela didn't answer. She stepped into the sphere. Light swallowed her. Outside, the skies began to crackle. Lightning danced across the clouds. A Yerk captain raised his weapon toward the bunker, only for his suit to short-circuit. Sparks flew from his chest. One by one, more soldiers screamed as their gear shut down. Their HUDs went dark. Their drones fell from the sky like dead birds. The entire battlefield shifted, and then came the voice. "This world remembers. It remembers pain. It remembers chains. It remembers her." Darren stood at the bunker door, smoke swirling around him. He watched as the remaining soldiers ran, dropping their weapons, screaming in fear. The ground beneath them opened. Roots of glowing energy rose like vines, wrapping machines and dragging them into the earth. From the light above, Varela stepped out. She didn't walk. She floated, eyes glowing like twin stars. The orb pulsed beside her, no longer guiding her. Now it followed her. Darren stared in awe. "Varela, what did you do?" She landed gently and whispered, "I woke up the planet." Above them, the warships tried to retreat, but their engines sputtered. One ship exploded mid-air. Another tilted and crashed into the mountain. In one night, the might of the Yerk Empire broke against a girl who had once been chained to a stone, and a human who refused to walk away. Rise of the signal-born galaxies remember power, but they never forget mercy. The battle at Black Ridge had ended. The skies were silent again. Wrecked ships burned on the horizon. Yerk soldiers who had once marched without fear now fled like shadows before the sun. At the center of it all stood Varela, barefoot on cracked stone, her silver-blue skin glowing, the floating orb circling her like a silent guardian. But she was no longer just a girl. She was signal-born, awakened, chosen, alive, and beside her stood the human who made that possible. Darren sat against the bunker wall, bleeding from his side, but smiling weakly. "You've got quite the light show," he said, coughing. "You sure you're not secretly a goddess?" Varela knelt beside him, placing her hand over his wound. The orb responded with a soft hum. Warmth spread through his body. "No," she said softly. "But maybe I was never meant to stand alone." Unreal. Orbit above the planet, the Yerk flagship received the final transmission from their ground teams. Signalborn activated. Forces lost. Retreat advised. The High Commander watched in disbelief. "Who is this human that stands with her?" He growled. A younger officer whispered, "The same one who walked into our camp alone." He broke her chains. The commander stared at the screen, furious. "Prepare the message. Let the galaxy know. We are at war with Earth now." Back on the surface, Darren stood again, wincing slightly. He looked around at the ruined battlefield. "So, what now? You going to stay here and scare away empires with your magic lights?" Varela looked up at the sky. "No, I need to go to the other worlds, the ones still under the Empire's boot." "You gonna fight them?" "I'm going to free them." She turned to Darren. "I can't do it without you." He raised an eyebrow. "Me? I'm just a guy with a half-broken blaster and bad luck." "You're the first person who didn't look at me with fear," she said. "You saw me and didn't walk away. That means more than any power." Darren chuckled. "Well, when you say it like that." He reached out his hand, she took it. The orb floated higher. New lights shone in the sky. Beacons traveling toward other forgotten worlds, waking old machines and whispering freedom to those who thought no one would come. Signalborn weren't gone. They were rising again, and this time, they had humans by their side. Days later, whispers spread across colonies and space stations. "Did you hear?" A girl with glowing eyes shut down a whole fleet. "They say a human was with her, one man, one blaster, against an army." The Empire is scared, and in the ruins of a rebel bar on a moon called Rita 9, a soldier poured a drink and said, "They tortured her," and he stood up alone. He raised his glass. "To the girl who became a storm," another added, "and to the human who lit the fire." Back on Cathar, a small ship launched from the canyon. Darren sat in the pilot's seat. Varela stood beside him, watching the stars. "We're not heroes," he said. "No," she replied. "We're just..." What came next? As the engines roared to life, the orb settled between them, quiet, glowing, ready, and far away, in the dark halls of the Empire, a trembling voice whispered, "She was supposed to die in chains." But the human broke the rules. The end